The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon throws a fan-favorite character across an ocean, introduces a new dynamic, and leaves our hero between a metaphorical rock and a hard place. Here's what the ending of Season 1 means. Early on in The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, Daryl manages to break free from his captors and starts wandering France, searching for a way home, running into some new Walker variants, and meeting plenty of new characters along the way. Where the original series focused on Daryl's transformation from a lone wolf survivalist to a beloved leader and a surrogate father figure to RJ and Judith Grimes, Daryl Dixon explores this newfound empathy as Daryl becomes a protector of a young boy named Laurent. Laurent is a young boy who was born via C-section after his mother had already turned into a zombie, and who is now revered as the Messiah by a religious network called the Union of Hope. Members of the Union believe Laurent is destined to end the apocalypse and restore humanity to its former glory.
If we're wrong, at least you will have helped a boy get to a better place. But if we're right, why not bet on hope?
In a storyline that draws some parallels to that of The Last of Us, Daryl agrees to transport this young savior across France to the Union's base. Though in Episode 5, Daryl, Laurent's father Quinn, and the nun Isabelle are captured by agents of the Pouvoir. The episode ends on a cliffhanger, in which Daryl is forced into a gladiator fight against the enhanced walkers created by the Pouvoir, while some members of the Union sneak into the Pouvoir's arena to stage a desperate rescue attempt. The finale of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon begins inside the gladiator pit, where Daryl quickly defeats a few of the Pouvoir's genetically enhanced walkers. Quinn is sent in and chained to Daryl to provide more of a challenge, though the pair still manage to defeat wave after wave of these new and improved zombies. Their success draws a surprising amount of support from the crowd, who start cheering Dixon as Daryl and Quinn fight. The enraged Pouvoir leader Janae decides to execute Daryl and Quinn before things get out of hand, but they're saved by a well-timed bullet which kicks off a full-blown uproar inside the arena. In the ensuing chaos, Daryl and Quinn escape their chains, and Quinn reveals that he was infected during their battle. Quinn sacrifices himself to make way for Daryl and Laurent's escape, declaring his love for Isabelle, his former lover, and Laurent's biological aunt, who raised Laurent in Quinn's absence. Daryl and his Union allies rush to free Isabelle and Laurent from Pouvoir custody, though during the final stage of their escape, they come face to face with the reanimated corpse of Quinn. In a heartbreaking turn of events, Laurent is forced to kill the walker who was once his father, saving Isabelle and later declaring,
"It wasn't him anymore, and he was never my father."
With Quinn put down for good, the group completes their escape from the arena and splits up on the road. Farlou and Emile depart into the woods, while the rest flee towards Mont Saint-Michel. Along the way, Isabelle confesses to Daryl that she invented a good deal of Laurent's messianic powers, hoping to impress Daryl and draw support for the Union. Oddly, this brief confession is juxtaposed with a roadside ambush from Pouvoir agents led by Stéphane Caudron, while Laurent displays an eerie level of persuasion that borders on the supernatural. Laurent imparts a message from God and somehow convinces Caudron to gun down his fellow agent, allowing Isabelle, Daryl, and Laurent to continue on their way. Finally, the trio arrives in the fortified city of Mont Saint-Michel, where the religious haven known as the Nest resides. Despite all that he went through to protect Laurent and deliver the boy safely to the Nest, Daryl still has his heart set on a return to America, and he departs in the night against Isabelle's protests. After a brief stop in Normandy, Daryl boards a boat on Omaha Beach. He is about to set sail when he hears someone calling his name, and discovers that Laurent had followed him in order to say a proper goodbye. Unfortunately, his calls also have attracted a fresh horde of walkers, and thus the first season of Daryl Dixon ends with a cliffhanger, as Daryl has to choose whether to set sail or turn back to save Laurent. Despite being a brutal murderer and a sworn enemy to Daryl Dixon, Stéphane is visibly conflicted when Janae gives him the orders to kill Laurent, and his resolve crumbles when faced with actually murdering the child. After returning to the Pouvoir hideout of Maison Mère, Stéphane attempts to lie his way out of Janae's interrogation when he returns without Daryl or Laurent. Unfortunately for him, she doesn't believe any of it, and orders her agents to torture him for more information. While Daryl Dixon and his comrades may have escaped the wrath of Janae for now, their fate now hinges on Stéphane's ability to withstand torture, since he's one of the few people who knows the secret location of the Nest. Considering the gross levels of human experimentation that Janae and the rest of the Pouvoir have demonstrated, it's unlikely that Stéphane will be able to hold out forever. This perfectly sets up the impending conflict between the Nest and the surviving members of the Pouvoir, something that will likely be a major focus in Daryl Dixon's Season 2. Most exciting to some longtime fans, the episode's final moments reunite fans with the Walking Dead staple Carol. Just before the credits roll, the episode cuts away to Freeport, Maine, where an unnamed drifter is seen riding Daryl's iconic motorcycle. The cyclist is pursued by Carol, and after a brief scuffle, she knocks him unconscious with a wrench. She interrogates him and discovers that he bought the motorcycle from survivors living further up the road, and she locks him in the trunk before riding off on Daryl's motorcycle. Any Walking Dead fan will know that Carol and Daryl are closer than perhaps any other characters in the entire series, and have been there for each other through more than a decade of strife and heartbreak. Despite never pursuing a romantic relationship, they professed their love for each other before Daryl left in the original series finale. Now, love has driven Carol to seek out her friend after his disappearance, picking up the trail in Maine and setting up a return for the next season of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. After leaving their relationship up in the air in the original series finale, this reunion could herald a true happy ending for both Daryl and Carol. Either way, we'll definitely be seeing more of her. The second season has been announced as The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol. While much of Daryl Dixon Season 1 centers around Daryl's survival and desire to fight his way home to his family, the finale helps to clarify that the series is also a very dysfunctional father-son story, one that is bogged down by a long history of family trauma.
Sounds hard.
Yeah, it was, when he was around, which was hardly ever.
Throughout both the original The Walking Dead series and Daryl Dixon, we learn that Daryl's father was extremely abusive and neglectful, and that he was hardly ever there for him or his brother Merle. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Daryl tells Isabel that his grandfather had neglected Daryl's father as well, and hints at the generational trauma that has been passed down through the Dixon family. Now this trauma threatens the development of another young boy, Laurent, to whom Daryl has become a pseudo-father figure. The series tells us as much during the final confrontation between Quinn and Laurent, where Daryl encourages Laurent to kill his father's reanimated body, and Laurent disowns his true father once and for all. When Daryl leaves in the middle of the night, Isabel boldly calls him out for repeating the cycle of father-son abandonment that left him so dysfunctional in the first place. Thus, when Laurent arrives on the beach, he forces Daryl to finally confront the trauma left behind by his father. Will Daryl end up breaking the cycle and remaining by Laurent's side as a real father figure? Or will he succumb to the same weakness that caused his own substantial abandonment issues? Although this season finale places a heavy emphasis on Daryl Dixon's attachment issues and his newfound connection to Laurent, some fans online aren't too thrilled about this family trauma storyline that the show has thrust into Daryl's lap. As pointed out by many fans on Reddit, Daryl has already served as a surrogate father figure for RJ and Judith Grimes, essentially raising both of them after Rick Grimes' disappearance in Season 9. This somewhat invalidates Isabel's argument about repeating the cycle, since staying in France would be an act of abandonment in itself.
You think you're escaping history by doing this, but you're not. You're repeating it.
As such, one could argue that Daryl's abandonment issues concern his true family rather than his newfound French allies. To truly conquer his history of family dysfunction, Daryl will need to return to America and resume his role as a father figure to the Grimes children. If this explanation holds any weight, it could set up a very interesting conflict for Season 2 of Daryl Dixon, wherein Laurent and his religious allies attempt to stop Daryl from returning to where he arguably truly belongs. While the ending of Daryl Dixon primarily serves as a setup for the series' forthcoming second season, it's important to clarify how the season finale could tie into the rest of the franchise as a whole. Because Daryl is still in France at the end of the series, this finale also makes it extremely unlikely that we'll see Daryl in the upcoming Rick and Michonne spin-off, something that will no doubt disappoint plenty of fans, since his original goal was to track down Rick Grimes. On top of that, it's important to note that both Negan and Maggie Rhee find themselves in Manhattan in The Walking Dead Dead City. If Daryl does return to America, it's not out of the question that we'll see him and Carol overshoot their destination and wind up further down the East Coast, potentially making a cameo in Dead City Season 2. While some fans online were entirely unenthusiastic about the way this finale put pressure on Daryl Dixon to stay with Laurent, showrunner David Zabel says that he had planned this ending from the start. Zabel explained during an interview with The Wrap, "That was really my first pitch on the story. At that point, he's not going to say it because he's not that kind of guy. He is like, I know I've got to do this. This is an obligation. Regardless of what I want for myself, I've got to do this thing." Zabel went on to say that this inner conflict is hinted at earlier in the episode, when Daryl is trying to leave in the middle of the night. Zabel explained that Norman Reedus chose to play that scene with demonstrative frustration, angrily throwing supplies into his bag because he is torn on whether or not he should really leave. Though this cliffhanger ending might not sit well with some fans, it's clear that both Zabel and Reedus wanted to emphasize Daryl Dixon's inner turmoil when he finally arrives on that beach, having discovered a new kind of family and nearly abandoning them when they need him most. It's safe to say that many fans were probably disappointed when it was announced that the rumored Daryl and Carol spin-off series will be moving forward with only one of those characters. On top of the fact that they are both fan-favorite characters who have been around since Season 1, their chemistry together is one of the undisputed highlights of the entire series. Daryl's solemn journey overseas through France feels a little bit lonely when you remember he was supposed to be accompanied by his best friend. Though The Walking Dead primary director Greg Nicotero says there was an unseen benefit in removing her from Season 1. He explained during an interview with TV Insider, "I think having the show concentrate on Daryl specifically and his experiences to lay the groundwork for that and then to bring Carol in later, it allows for richer storytelling. It just doesn't rely on two characters that you already know because then there are less places to go. I think it allowed Daryl to grow." Nicotero went on to explain that the return of actress Melissa McBride in the finale is also a boon for the series, since both McBride and Norman Reedus will have a good deal of involvement with the development of Carol and Daryl's next chapter. As for what that next chapter will hold, fans will just have to wait until the Book of Carol drops in 2024.